with some of those hefty scriptures, I thought I would start us out with something a little humorous. There was a young man who called his mother's mother and announced that he had just met the woman of his dreams. And his mother said, "Well, why don't you send her flowers or invite her over for supper, for a cooked meal?" And so the day after that big date, his mother called to see how things had gone. "Mom, the evening was an absolute disaster. It was horrible," he said. "Why? Didn't she come over?" she asked. "Well, yeah, she came over and I got her the flowers, but she refused to cook." I thought that fit in with the banquet table. In Jeremiah, we hear God bringing a case against the people. God had brought the people out of slavery in Egypt, helped them get through the wilderness, and brought them to a good land. But they seem to have quickly forgotten all of that. They're distracted by the things of the world. It seems that those who rule also ignore the teachings of God, and even the priests don't lead and teach as godly servants. They've all departed from what they learned, from God's leading and God's rescuing. And now the people, the leaders, the priests, whether they're in power or not, everybody thinks that it's all up to them and under their control, and they are going to save their own lives. And then we're given this New Testament lesson, and it includes one of the numerous stories of Jesus sitting down at a meal. So Luke shows us Jesus invited to eat at a Pharisee's home, and Jesus is reflecting on how the guests sit up there in places of honor. You know, the first come, first serve, I get the best seat. And so, of course, Jesus sees a teaching moment. He says, take a lower seat, take a lower place. That way you might be invited to move up. His lesson that day and today is about hospitality, but not perhaps in the way we might think about hospitality. It's about more than being a good host. Hospitality reaches further than our own tables. It reaches out into the streets, as far as the prisons and refugee camps, to all the places where people are forgotten and made to feel less than human. Jesus' meaning is that this sort of invitation is extended without strings attached. Don't invite someone expecting them to repay you. Invite them out of your compassion and your kindness. And ultimately, you will be the one who is blessed. But I think at the heart of both of these scriptures are humility and encouragement. And they're broad-reaching terms, not meant only for us to take personally, but to think about in a wider sense. Hospitality, humility, encouragement that reaches beyond our doors, our towns. And underlying this is the prophet's reminder that nothing that we do is on our own. Nothing we've gained comes from our work alone, and added to the lesson at the banquet table, and we're being opened up to realize and remember that we need each other. Kind of like Kay said right at the beginning of service. She appreciated everyone reaching out in love. We need our Creator God who gives us all we need, and the earth besides. We have to help each other. We have to get past the old adage, and such a Yankee way of thinking, as pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, though some are able to do so. But isn't it more generous, more compassionate to share as God freely shares with us? This is a message for us to take personally, yes. But it's also for us to share by thinking of or praying for and reaching out to those who need us, to those who need God. And it isn't only about food, though Jesus seems to be focused on it often enough. I guess he was always hungry. But Jesus' focus on food was as much about feeding the body as it was the spirit and the soul. Dom Helder Câmara was an archbishop of Brazil from 1964 to 1985. He knew what Jesus meant. And you may have heard this quote before, but he read Jesus' invitation to humility and hospitality as a connection between justice and food. And in a very real sense, the risk in pointing out our equal value before God when we come to the table. He said, "When I feed the poor, they call me a saint. But when I ask why the poor are hungry, they call me a communist." Eating, that most human and most necessary of activities, and all that we associate it, are entwined also with our spiritual lives. And it's no surprise that meals take precedence and are very significant in the Bible. I always think of our dinners and how we welcome folks to come in, and sure, we want to make sure we raise money and have a little bit extra for the church, but ultimately it's about sitting down and eating in hospitality. And you don't have to be great, you don't have to be small, you simply have to come and sit and be nourished, not only by the food, but by community. When we can remember that it's God who provides for us, we can claim the call to us to provide and help for one another. We can't forget Jesus' warning against those who proudly assume positions of power, for in the end, humiliation will be their undoing. So we think about ourselves and our world and those who would take power for power's sake rather than for justice and to feed the spirit and the body and the soul. So what food do we offer one another? Who in our community is hungry in their spirit as well as in their body? Where in our world are those who claim power without humility, that we should offer Jesus' reminders to ourselves? I think those are questions that are often offered to us personally. And with God, we have the power to spiritually feed the world and nourish one another and our neighbors. But only you know your God-given gift, your strengths, and how you can be a part of God's welcoming and nourishing people.